Okay, so I think the point of this exercise is really just to kind of to wake us up from thinking that our traditional way of teaching, of delivering the curriculum, is not really preparing our students for lifelong learning, for jobs that you know, we don't even know what sort of jobs are going to be existing by the time they retire. You sort of think our students graduating now could be working in 50 years' time. We have no, you think back what technologies were available 50 years ago, what the workplace looked like 50 years ago, and then project that forward 50 years, and I guess we can imagine that the change is going to be even more rapid than it has been. We've no notion of what that's going to look like, really. So we need to be thinking a little bit more widely. So in terms of some of the challenges of embedding these types of skills within the workplace, this slide here is very much about, you know, I suppose in terms of the UK sector, we've all been told, right, we need to embed employability into our programs, we need to make students more employable. And so therefore we focus very much on you know, providing things like work-related learning, things sort of extrinsic and extra to the curriculum. Now I would argue that what we should be trying to do is build those skills much more implicitly into the curriculum, so that students get the opportunity to develop them all the way through. So are they developing those employability skills right from module 1, day 1? You know, what skills are they developing there that helps them go forward? So these are the types of activities, and you can have a look through here and see which ones of these are available to you guys, to your students. I know somebody mentioned earlier that they do internments, work placements, embedded work-related learning, so this is like short periods of work experience as part of their degree. Are there extra curricular resources available to your students that help them in terms of their career management, writing their CVs? Do you have those types of resources available to your students within the university? Yes? No? No. Live projects and briefs are working with industry to give things like the problem-based learning scenarios where industry can come in and provide authentic examples. Certainly you see this in the business sector a lot, in engineering sector as well, where local industries will come and give a real-life problem to the students and allow them to work on that for the course of the semester. So this is, we'll talk, I think we spoke last time about providing authentic assessments, but these type of things encourage that. Community projects, this would be things like having students working with the local community, whether it's, I can think of loads of different examples, but working in citizens advice bureaus, working in environmental sort of gardening projects, working in student outreach projects, so going to you know, fairs and festivals, and they talk about their discipline or their subject to school children or students or the general public. So just being involved in the community of the project. How far do you liaise with companies and industry when you're developing your curriculum? How much input do they have in your course design? Now, I imagine that people in dentistry, the professional body, will have a huge impact on the course design. Other disciplines, you know, depending on how vocational it is, you'll have different interaction with industry. Do you bring in guest lecturers or people from industry to talk to your students at any point?
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. Do you have networks with your alumni? So do you retain contact with your students that have graduated and ask them to come back and speak to your students? So I think sometime this morning, when we were talking about research, someone said, oh, students don't understand that they need these skills. Yeah? But if you have your alumni coming in and having that conversation with them, that can start to generate those ideas and get them thinking about that. Okay? And then employer or industry liaison group. So when you're revisiting the curriculum, are you guys from engineering? Do you work closely with industry when you're redesigning your curriculum? So that's those kind of things getting embedded into the programs. So these are some of the ideas that people are using to get these kind of ideas of employability and job-ready skills into the curriculum. But this is what tends to happen, that some discipline areas are very engaged with that, some subject teams are very engaged with that. sometimes individuals within program teams are very enthusiastic and do lots of these things. And so it can be a bit ad hoc whether students experience this or not. Some of these things tend to be extracurricular, so the students have to go out and find this activities for themselves rather than having it all embedded in the curriculum. So whether they get it or not might depend on what other things they have going on in their life education balance, you know, so whether they can uptake or take part in some of those activities. Anybody want to comment on any of those, provide any examples of those that you're currently doing? Yeah.
I'm giving an entrepreneurship course,
Uh-huh.
so that's why one of the key things is the experience from previous entrepreneurs. So I invite a couple of those, either successful or failed, so they come and share their experiences.
Yes, yeah.
To the course as this guest lecture.
And I think that's great, and I think it's also important for them to come and share the failures, because it's that whole idea that you have to keep trying something and it's not going to be a success the first time. I have a lovely example, I think, it's from James Dyson. I think he made 2,500 or something or other prototypes of the Dyson cleaner before he got one to work. And, you know, I just think that's a brilliant example, you know, that is, he actually said it's not that nobody had thought of using a vacuum, a cylinder for hoovering up dust before, but nobody kept doing it until it worked. You know, it was just that resilience and working through failure. So yeah, I think that it's important to see examples of entrepreneurship and also to see where it's failed. And I think you were talking about your students being keen on entrepreneurship as well. Any other examples there that people are currently?
Might be an example.
Yes.
So we ask students to decide and support their solution.
Yes, so they're reading the case studies, coming up with some solutions, yeah. And where are you getting the case studies from? From industry or from industry? Yeah, yeah. Any other good things that people are already doing? Yeah.
Well, there are two things that the industry and university partnership. Yes. The first one is with Mitsubishi Electronics. There's a robot in one of our labs, and the robot can play Sritaki, I think.
Okay.
Play chess.
Yes.
And the student who takes a course related to that robotics and get, I think, B and higher grades, get a certificate from Mitsubishi Electronics.
Okay.
Same level. And another thing is Peras course is the partnership with SAP.
Right.
And again, if they completed the course with a grade of B or 70 or over 70, then they get a certificate again. And plus, these are the ones that we as instructors are more reactive.
Yes.
There are some student clubs that arrange the career days or startup days. They make contact with the companies. They make all the arrangements.
Yeah. Yeah.
Arrange the building, arrange the stations, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And they invite the companies, and the companies talk to students, etc. And it's also nice for students.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think certainly I've seen that in engineering as well, where students kind of they have a sort of a engineering group that's related to the professional body, and then, as you say, go out on visits and things. Yeah, yeah. I was working with a food college in Ireland, and they have a lot of links with the local food industry, and they give live projects to the students where they ask them to come up with a new recipe for some kind of fast food thing or some new packaging. And they just give the students the problem, and then they come back 3 months later, and the students all present, and the company give them a small prize or what have you. And it's just so, you know, in terms of the company, it's not a big, huge commitment, and they get some new ideas out of it. But, you know, for the students, they suddenly become really engaged because it's an authentic problem. And then whatever the winning food thing that they create, we get for the graduation dinner as well. So, so there's an added bonus. So yeah, anybody else? Anybody else doing anything with the local community, engaging the students with the community?
I did a project, but it was limited with 5 students only because I wanted them to be really responsible.
Yeah.
I took 5 students and worked with a women's cooperative,
Okay.
in which there were many women who are needy,
Yes.
poor women, and they designed 5 bags, and the women really liked them, and they decided to produce them.
Oh, okay.
They are going to, the semester has ended, but the project didn't. They'll continue to develop the products, and maybe they'll design the logo.
Lovely.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, yeah. And I think that example brings out lots of lovely ideas. One is once they've done the product design and all the rest of it, you suddenly need to start working with the business people and think, well, actually, how can we produce this and scale this up? So you've got that interdisciplinary learning. And I think the other thing there, cohort was of students with the same problem that the last year's group looked at, and they kind of pretty much get to the same point. Nobody ever kind of takes it forward. So they have these projects that really stretch through and run for a number of years, and you get a whole lot of students working in them. And you also get that kind of peer-supported learning. So the final year students that are kind of, you know, doing their capstone stuff are supporting the first year students who are perhaps just doing a small piece of the project. So kind of for a project like the one you described, that would be ideal, you know, to extend it. How do you take it forward next year, you know, with perhaps more students and perhaps working with business studies students or what have you. So that's fantastic. And anybody else got any examples of things they're doing along these lines? Okay, so lots of examples there, and obviously you've got some great examples of practice going on. The key to it is that it's providing opportunities for all students rather than you know, as far as you can, and to kind of spread good practice about what you're doing as well. So if you've got a good project, you've got it going well, you know, and you want to make it more interdisciplinary, you want to make it extended, you're going to need help to do that. So how do you communicate with your colleagues to develop that further? This next slide is sort of a theory, which is all a bit boring, so I don't think we'll bother with it. Just the employability, what is it? And I think we've kind of really explored this in so many ways already. You know, thinking about skills, this one over here, thinking about students on this kind of cycle, so they're driving it themselves, getting them to reflect on what their current skills are, being able to articulate what their current skills are, identifying opportunities to help them get to where they want to be, and then recording their achievement either through updating their CVs, perhaps developing LinkedIn profiles, and evaluating themselves. And I personally think that this area here, so you guys can't see that, but I'll put that slide up, is really important for all students, because my experience working with students is that you know that they've done project work, you know that they've done teamwork, you know they've had to self-manage their time to achieve something. And then I was doing sort of mock interviews with students saying, oh, can you give me an example of when you worked in a team, or when you know, and they sit there and go, oh, I don't know. And you're like, well, do you remember that thing we did like 3 weeks ago? And it's just articulating what their skills and what their strengths are. So helping them go through this type of cycle where they self-evaluate, and it's a similar kind of process that you guys will be doing for your fellowship applications, reflecting on where you're currently now, what opportunities there are to get to where you want to be, and actually evaluating and going forward with those. So I think this model here, and in some way kind of embedding that into your curriculum with your students, so they get that opportunity to think about, you know, why are they at university? They've made that initial decision, but how are they going to get to the next step? Are they doing this degree just because it was their best subject at school and they're kind of just doing it, and they don't actually want to be the engineer, the chemist, the historian, or whatever at the end of it? So getting them to reflect on why they're doing the degree, what skills they want, you know, what do they want to be when they come out, I think can be a really useful process. Do you do anything like that with your students at the moment? Do they do any professional development planning or personal development planning?
We use our third year internship as an informal way of. We direct the students at the companies which they would like to be employed
Okay.
in their close to their final year.
Yeah.
So there is nothing like a formal, strict, not a strict, but an organized way, but you just
You do it informally.
organically.
Yes, yes. So they identify the type of companies they want to work for, and then, yeah. So it can be useful to support students, and if there are I suppose many UK universities have formal portfolios to encourage students to collect up all of their experiences and things like that, so they can start collating those throughout their degree process. But there's many free tools that are available now that students can develop their portfolio, and I think the best way of doing this actually is supporting them in developing a LinkedIn profile where they start to gather up all the evidence of their skills and experience and what they want to do. Okay, so just another definition here. I think I'll just give you a second to read through this bit on the right hand side about what we're actually trying to achieve.